Hello and welcome to the program. Your host, Ron Whitlock, coming to you from the Lone Star National Bank corporate offices in McAllen, Texas. And we have on the program Gina. Now, Gina is from the Rio Grande Valley, graduated from Parsan Alamo. Gina, in what year?
1990.
1990. Now, Gina Sanchez, is that your maiden name, or is that your maiden name?
Yes.
So, Gina Sanchez graduated PhD in 1990 and has gone on to become a global financial powerhouse. She has about $60 billion plus that you manage as chairwoman and chairperson of the company that you started. Phenomenal experience and phenomenal success story for South Texas. Quite a role model for all of the young people watching our program, not only on Fox 38 in Corpus and other stations and other areas here in greater South Texas. So you come back to the Valley, where you graduated in 90 and went off to make your mark. And what do you see the changes in the Valley in South Texas and the border from where it was when you left and when you come back and what you see now?
You know, it's incredible. The first initial changes I saw were actually shortly after I left, when NAFTA happened. And so that actually created an incredible boom in the Valley, and just in terms of building and expansion. But recently what I've noticed is, to some degree, the Valley, and I think part of this is the result of technology, but the Valley sort of becoming a part of the world and not being as separated as it used to be. You know, it used to be this very, distinct experience. And I see so much more, I think maybe it's the result of Facebook and Twitter and sort of just kind of being able to keep in touch with people more, but I see the Valley in a way kind of integrating. And I think it's amazing what's happening. I mean, that's just my view, but it is extraordinary.
Did you see any stagnation or concerns when, after 9/11, and the river became the dividing point, or the unifying point for these peoples? Because up during your lifetime and the lifetime of this reporter, we had two checkpoints, Sorita and Encino, and we had one 25 miles inland when you went to Mexico City, went to the interior. Otherwise, we were one community. We shopped, we got married, we dated back and forth. There was no dividing line. And now that the river has divided us, it seemed like it has not been helpful to the economy here or to the nation.
I completely agree with you, and in many ways, because of the situation within Mexico, just the natural ability to walk across has, really gone away. It's so dangerous now. It was a part of what I thought, my experience was here was Reynosa was a part of McAllen, I mean, it's just how it worked out. And, I worked with a team who made the film Cruzando, which really, one of the interesting storylines of that film was about a young man who was trying to cross the border to see his estranged father, and at the end of the movie, he wants to go back home. And so it's just kind of a fascinating view that not everybody stays here, but that the Valley was very permeable, as you said. People came and went. They didn't come here to stay. They could go across it more freely, and I think by creating that really hard and fast separation of the border and the river, it has created less of that natural movement that used to happen. And it's sad. People get separated from their families by virtue of coming here, and I think it's just been not just unhelpful to the economy, but I think it actually takes a part of people's souls when they can't reconnect with their families.
We've been talking on this program for since 9/11 about this having been an economic security zone, because it was so vibrant on both sides, and both sides were in conjunction with each other. It was there was no dividing line.
Absolutely.
It was so malleable, and it was so breathing, and it was life, and it was so forth. And so by virtue of that, the border region, really from your area, our area where we're coming from this program right here today, all the way to California, it kind of provided some kind of an economic security zone that because of that intertwining, it was like this rather than like that.
Absolutely.
And because of that, does that make any sense to you? It was an economic security zone, and now it's an economic unsecurity zone.
Absolutely.
Because of the line in the middle of the river, from half of it from here to El Paso.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the result of that has obviously been deleterious to this area for sure, but it's also been, I mean, it's incredibly negative all over. If you looked at, for example, the mall here in McAllen used to sell the highest per capita, like per square footage, highest dollar value per square footage, and that was because people were coming, to take things for resale across the border, and it was quite easy to do that. And now you can't do that as easily anymore. And we have suffered, but also every single one of those manufacturers has suffered. The mall has suffered. Everyone has suffered, right? And that suffering goes all the way up to the top of Dillard's, And so I think people can be very short-sighted when creating a lot of these policies.
And the border wall in particular. Just a visualization of, again, that border wall. First, we try to put a wall down the middle of the river, which is an impossibility. You can't do it anyway.
That's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. And then we built a border wall, and so we increased the business of making 20-foot ladders to get over the 18-foot border wall.
Right.
And so it slows them down 5 minutes.
Right.
And we're spending billions of dollars, and want to spend billions more.
Right. And what really, in my opinion, needs to happen is more well-thought-out immigration policy as opposed to sort of continued deterrence. And I think what people don't understand, especially particularly about immigration today versus immigration, say, 10 years ago, is that so many of these immigrants, particularly in this border crisis that we're experiencing now, so many of those immigrants are coming from extremely violent and dangerous areas. Honduras is the murder capital of the world. The capital of Honduras is the murder capital of the world. The government is defunct. It is not operating, and right now you have basically gangs running the country, and as a result they are running around and they are killing people. Over 7,000 murders in 2013 in the capital of Honduras. We had a little over 300 murders in New York City. As a comparison, this is the most dangerous place in the entire world. These actually are not immigrants. These are people fleeing for their lives. They've given up their entire homes, these are people that had businesses that were being extorted by gangs. I mean, this is a refugee situation. This is a situation that under international global law people would be given, they would be given asylum, and
Exactly.
they're not being given that asylum because so many of them don't even have access to lawyers to be able to make their case. And that, to me, is, I think people just don't understand what's happening right now in Central America that's actually creating this border surge that we're seeing. They just think it's a bunch of people who want what they have, and that's so ridiculous.
And this was a law signed basically unanimously by the U.S. Congress, signed by former Texas Governor, then sitting President George Bush. He signed it into law, where we are basically required by that law to let these children and their parent or parents come in and get and be permitted to go to wherever they might have family in the United States. That is the law of the books at this particular point in time.
Yep. And recently there was a ruling in New York that basically is making detention illegal, and because it is ridiculous that we are detaining these people in prisons, and if you look at the situation there, it's very, very difficult. I mean, they keep it very cold for sanitation purposes, but we had a baby come into Sacred Heart with Save the Children with 103-degree fever. Right? That is, that shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be subjecting, refugees to such an inhumane situation. We're all, unless you're a Native American, we are all immigrants. I mean, everybody has a story like that.
I think my point to the audience and to you is, listen, we talk about deporting brown-skinned people back across a line of border that we have created after we stole all these states from Mexico. We stole California, and we stole Arizona. We stole Mexico, and we stole Texas. We offered Mexico $30 million, but they didn't accept it. We created a war, went down, and went into Mexico City. Said, okay, now we're going to give you $15 million. Is that okay? Right. And
Yeah.
then the gold rush and all
absolutely.
history.
Yeah.
And we want to hide from that, Gina.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, no, the Mexican War, oh, no.
Yeah.
Never happened.
You know, I mean, I'll tell you, Alejandro Iñárritu, who just made history by being the first Mexican to be given, to be awarded the Best Picture Oscar, the Best Director Oscar, and the Best Writer Oscar. He said in his Best Picture speech, all I hope is that, Mexico can endeavor to build the government that it deserves, and that the immigrants who are here in the United States are treated with the dignity and the respect that they deserve from other immigrants who built this immigrant nation.
We're going to be back in a moment because she just told the audience here at the corporate headquarters for Lone Star National Bank that within 10 years, the United States is going to be so desirous of immigrants, it's going to be economically very difficult on us if we don't have them and figure out a way to get them. We're going to have that discussion when we come back. Welcome back to the telecast. Gina Sanchez, Gina, powerhouse from PSJ, the border region, all the way up to New York City, and now you're in your company overseeing over $60 billion in people's money, helping them to plan for retirement. What a great story that'll is. That'll be another program next time you come back. So, within 10 years, these people, they were insisting, in some cases, some people in our society want them deported immediately, put 12 million people on a bus and ship them out tomorrow, which is impossible. We're going to be begging them to come back in 10 years. What's that all about?
Well, I mean, so there's a few sides to that story. The first is that because people are undocumented here, by definition, we do not understand the economic impact that they already have on our economy. If you look at the agricultural economy, if you look at the construction industry, a lot of these industries are highly dependent on very, very low wage, no benefits workers, and as a result, the amount of money that we pay for our agriculture would increase dramatically if in fact we were paying everyone minimum wage and benefits.
You
right?
just told the audience a $10 tomato, $30 head of lettuce.
Yes,
is
exactly.
that in line?
That's precisely
What do you think
right.
about that? That sounds good.
Yeah, and so what people don't understand is, first of all, what the immediate impact already is by having immigrants here. The second is that because we don't incentivize women to have children in this country or most of the world, quite frankly, and as a result, your ability to garner a wage drops by 30% by having a child. That is incredible to me. And so as a result, we're not seeing the same birth rates that we saw before. And naturally, as a country begins to mature, you will see birth rates drop. And what that means is we're going to have more people in retirement than people paying into the system. So if you're not going to birth them, you are going to have to get them from somewhere. That's where immigration matters. And that, you have to think about a way to be able to bring in the people you need in all parts of the economy. And remember what I just said about the $10 tomato. It's every single part of this economy that needs immigrants because we do not birth the people, enough babies to be able to fuel our economy and keep it going.
And you went to school with what were called migrant workers, who were, in a lot of cases in those days, they were undocumented, and they were permitted to go and pick where they went and came back to the Riverland Valley.
Our valedictorian was a migrant. Our valedictorian, she was an amazing woman.
At Far San Juan Alamo.
At Far San Juan Alamo in 1990. She was an immigrant. She used to come to school 1 month late and leave school 1 month early, and yet she still made the highest marks in the school.
So, immigrants are a component and a very key factor in your opinion. You're telling the audience here today, telling me personally and them vicariously, that the immigrants that come in from Mexico come here to work, and then in a lot of cases they want to go back. They want to stay here.
Exactly.
Forced to become a whatever or learn English and all that. They want to go back.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
We need them to work,
and we
should be able to allow them to go back home to see their families.
Exactly. Yeah, like they've done for decades.
Exactly.
Until we put the border
Until
wall
we put that wall,
up
which just
and
really aggravates me.
So, where do we go from here as it relates to our immigration policy, in your opinion? I mean, you have a master's degree in international policy studies from Stanford. You watch immigration as it relates to other countries, and yet the United States is doing the opposite of what other countries are doing to try to get them to come.
Yes, well, there's two answers to that question. One, which is an immediate need, and it has to do with the border crisis as it's happening today, and one is more of a future-looking answer. Right now, we as a country have to treat refugees as refugees. They are treated,
As we've always done.
well, as Germany treats them, as Jordan treats them. I mean, Jordan has the third largest city in Jordan is the refugee camp where all the Syrians live. That is how many refugees they're taking on board, right? Because they are refugees. And they understand international law. We are the only country in the world that doesn't abide by that same standard. And that has to change. But the second is the future, sort of looking towards the future and understanding what's happening to our Social Security system and to how that's going to play itself out over time. If you look at birth rates, if you look at death rates, if you understand the demographics, anybody with an undergraduate degree can figure out that that math doesn't add up. And without immigration,
if we're not giving birth to young people to fill that void at the bottom, then we better bring them in.
Exactly. Then we have to bring them in, and that's what
no choice.
And what it is amazing to me that we have so many highly educated people from abroad who come to our universities, have an education, and we cannot give them a green card, right? These are skilled, educated people, educated in our system. So, to me, that's the beginning of understanding how to recruit the right people.
Exactly. So. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the program. We have with us Gina Sanchez, PSA graduate in 1990, here on the border, coming to you, and we appreciate them hosting us today, the corporate center, corporate headquarters for Lone Star National Bank. So Gina, grew up on the border. Checkpoints were about 25 miles inland on the other side. Encino Solita to the north, about 30, 35 miles, más o menos, from where we're sitting right today. We had an economic security zone. Everything was chilly, everything was great. We loved each other. We had babies, we got together, we dated, went over there to shop, they came over to shop. They came over here, went over there. You want to cross the border, no problem. You go to Mexico, you come to the United States, there was no border patrol, no big problem, not a bunch of paperwork to have to do. Everything was great, but a secure country. World Trade Center, Al-Qaeda did what they did, and we secured the border, and we made it insecure. Why?
I think that the one terrible result of the Al-Qaeda attacks was that it created a mandate
to overreact
for zealotry.
Yeah.
I mean, this is real. I mean, the xenophobia that ensued post 9/11, that to me is very scary because it creates reason to be mean to people that you don't know, to have an opinion about someone whom you've never met. That's what xenophobia does. Is it allows ignorance a place at the table.
And it's exacerbated if they happen to have a different color skin.
Absolutely.
Speak with dialect somewhat differently.
If you can easily profile them, all the worse.
All the worse.
Right. And to me, xenophobia is simply an invitation for ignorance. And that is just I obviously spent my life educating myself, so obviously I don't believe in ignorance. You cannot make decisions when you don't have information, and yet we as a country began to make decisions based on these profiles that were in some ways unfounded, and that to me I think was the fallacy and the when I look at what Al-Qaeda did.
They did a lot.
I worry that they damaged our country far more through our own reaction than they did by killing people.
Far more than the 3,500 plus people that were killed in the Twin Towers.
Absolutely.
And it's continuing today because we're permitting it to continue.
Absolutely.
How do we turn it around? How do we turn that bus around?
Well, right now, there's so much inquiry now being made into the actions of the government post 9/11. Obviously the report that has been quoted, the torture report, which uncovers a lot of the renditions and kind of what happened post 9/11. I think think that there is now very, very serious inquiry into what happened, and a kind of revelation that, in fact, the methods didn't work. And in many cases actually yielded unhelpful information, people who were simply giving information just to make it stop. And that is not helpful either. And I think that, you know, there is a very fine line between national security and, like I said, that xenophobic response that happens. And so, you know, to me, and especially we experience it here in the Valley because we are on the border. You know, this is the border, and it is in many ways we're on the front lines of it because this is where you come in. It is. It is the front door.
This is the front door, not the back door.
Absolutely. And so, you know, it meaningfully impacts our way of life because, as you said, we used to be able to come and go quite freely. It was very easy to shop on both sides. Everyone benefited. We had a very cordial relationship with
safe, secure, and legal.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it doesn't help that unfortunately the situation in Mexico has deteriorated as well. That just sort of fed the xenophobics. I mean, to some degree, that really kind of gave additional firepower because of the effective civil war that's happening in Mexico with the gangs. And so, you know.
Could it have been, it started with the border wall and with 9/11, it started at the border and went south? Did we make Mexico more insecure by what we did and overreacting?
We make Mexico insecure by refusing to legalize marijuana. So, because that is the business that we are effectively, that is what creates that trade, right? And
exactly.
You know, it is extraordinary to me that we have yet to figure out a way to remove that incentive. We continue to keep that incentive there, and you know that's a whole other kind of topic. But nonetheless, I'm simply saying that. You know, as a country, we need to think, you know, very seriously about the negative side effects of some of these maybe perhaps well-intentioned ideas, but they're not always going to work out the way we plan. And if you know anything about policy, you know there's always side effects and they're not always good. And I think that
unintended circumstances.
Absolutely. And I think one of the challenges we have of the government today is that our government today has now become so ambitious and so blinded that they're unwilling to work together that we aren't getting the best policy either. Because the best policy comes from coordination and different points of view. But we're not getting that. We're getting one-sided policies that are being shoved down the throat of the other side of the aisle. And that, to me, tells me that we will make policy mistakes by definition.
No collaboration, no working together.
Exactly.
It's all, if you're going to get it your way, then you have the point.
Yeah.
And we're not going to let you get the point because we need the point on our side. So it's just like this. So we are a country divided against ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And therefore it may fall. Yeah. We'll be back with a wrap-up in just a moment. Welcome back to our wrap-up segment with Gina Sanchez, PhD grad 1990, here on the Mexican-U.S. border, coming to you from McAllen, Texas, the corporate offices and headquarters of the Lone Star National Bank. Thank you for letting us host it and do this interview with Gina here. Gina, what do you have to tell the people of South Texas about what they can do to perhaps try to affect what's happening in our country as we go forward? What do they need to tell Washington, D.C., and what do they need to tell on the other side in the Distrito Federal that would help us to recreate the economic security zone that we used to have in the time that you and I grew up here?
Well, that's a pretty lofty subject you've just asked me. You've asked me to opine on. Look, here's what I would say. I think that the first thing that needs to happen is we need to understand what the impact of the immigrant is today. That has not even begun to be understood. So we don't understand that impact. Without knowing what deportation does, we will never understand how we will harm ourselves with it. Everybody thinks it's a good thing. It's actually, economically, it could be a very, very bad thing. And what we just simply, because we don't have the numbers, we just don't know. I don't believe in ignorance. I think we need to uncover that. So that's the beginning of understanding the immigration debate, is understanding what our situation is.
And you know what? Mexico is not sending people anymore, legally or otherwise.
Exactly.
They're not coming back anymore. And generationally, they may not be wanting to come back in the 10 years that you're saying. We better have somebody back. Otherwise, we're going to have $10 tomatoes and $30 heads of lettuce.
Right.
And nobody to take care of the old people whose money you manage.
Right.
They're going to go, please give me a Mexican-American nurse. They're not here anymore. You told them with building border walls, we don't want you.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think the first part is understanding the situation today. The second part is accurately modeling what's going to happen in the future. And, you know, that to me, that conversation is not had. These conversations are being held along almost racial lines, in my opinion. And when you get that, you get supposition, you get opinion, but you don't get any facts, right? We need to deal in facts. We as a country need to make our policy based on facts.
Thank you, Gina
Thank you.
Sanchez. Thank you for joining us here on the telecast. Till next time, adios.